So as soon as we see this as a dog and we are able to identify it as a dog, and we are able to do that because of the learning which our brain has already performed. So in other ways, what we can say, we are able to identify this as a dog because of certain inputs, right? We can able to see the eyes, see the ears, see the paws, and these are all the characteristic features which we are able to capture through our vision and able to identify this as a dog. So say now it is a child. Now the child is available with no data or no amount of information about what this picture is about. So as soon as you show a child that this is a dog, so you are feeding that information externally to the child to identify this as a dog. So as soon as you say that, the child see this picture, capture the information, and send that information as electrical signals through the neurons and reaches the brain. So once the electrical signals are received at the receiving end or the input end of a neuron, it processes that information within the structure called as nucleus. So it is specially able to process that electrical signals or information that is conveyed by the eyes, and it retains certain part of information and able to activate or trigger certain amount of information, or trigger or amplify certain amount of information and pass it to the other neurons or other structural elements, or the similar structures, or other multiple neurons present in the brain. But this time when the input signals is at a certain frequency, say at certain magnitude, it enters the neuron. So once this neuron processes that signal, it may either amplify or attenuate the input signal and trigger the activation signals or trigger the output signals accordingly. So when you keep on feeding the same information, representing a dog to the child, so the same kind of information pass on to the neuron again and again, and it tries to activate the same kind of signals or same kind of activation elements as soon as the child see the picture dog. So this is the first part of training or building a neural network. So as soon as you see the dog, it captures the information, it sends it to the neurons, a neuron learns that information, triggers certain activation functions, and the triggering may be either amplified signals or attenuated signals. So after some days or after some time, when you try to show the child the same picture of a dog again, based on the learning which has happened into the human brain or the child's brain, it could easily able to identify back it as a dog. So how is this all possible? So all of this was possible due to the presence of learning elements, which we can say as neurons, through which it is able to identify this structure or this piece of image as a dog. So what are all the takeaways which we can make out of this discussion is, so when we want to build our or when we want to build an artificial neural network or a deep neural network, we are pretty much inspired with a similar logic which I explained over here. So the very first thing we need a simple collection or collection of simple devices working together called as neuron, right? So these are all the functional elements. Each and every neurons constitute the brain. So collection of these with large number of these neurons constitute a brain. So That's why the major thing which we take away over here is we need a collection of these simple elements or simple working elements called as neuron. And we need this collection of neurons, say a billions of numbers, right? So a human brain consists of billions of these structures. It's not one or two, it is about billions of numbers. Based on that, we could able to process the information so rapidly and so efficiently, and process the image or process the information at a faster levels. So we need a simple element called as, or simple learning element called as neuron, and we need these neurons in a billions. Then to make this neuron or make the neuron to learn, we need a lot of data, and that lot of data is required for training. So as soon as you tell a child or show the child this is a dog, and soon after some time if you ask the child what is this again, he might or may not able to identify that dog immediately, because the training has not performed, or training of that training for the child's brain is not sufficient at that point, right? So what that means, we have to show the a dog picture, a different kind of dog pictures, and make the child learn again and again. In other sense, we have to feed lot and lot of images or lot and lot of real images to make the child understand it is a dog. So we as a grown up, we could able to identify that it that picture as a dog, because we are learning that as a dog from past many years, right? We could able to easily identify it, we can able to name it as a dog, even the breed of the dog, so frequently or so rapidly, because the learning has already happened, right? So learning is already done, and this learning has carried out from many years. So that's why when you take a neural network which we are going to build, that is artificially, even for that we need large and large amount of data to make the neural network work accordingly. So in other words, a human brain and an artificial neural network, so at the very first step, they are just a hardware. They don't know any information to learn, or they don't know anything about performing any task or anything. So these hardware are available with us. So what we need to do, we need to feed large amount of data that, and train that network to process that data and or to identify that data at the end of the day. So for that we need a regular or large amount of data to train that network to perform that task. So on a whole, to summarize, so artificial neural networks are the collection of large number of simple devices. I specifically mention this as simple because when you take a structure of a neuron, it is almost all simple when it is compared to the overall structure of a brain. So we can't able to understand the structure of a brain when we just jump into understanding that, but we can understand the simplest element, right? We can understand that the whole brain is made up of network of these simple elements or simple learning elements called as neurons. So so to build out the artificial neural network, the raw elements or raw material is the simple devices called as artificial neurons. The network learns to conduct certain tasks such as recognition of a dog by training the neurons. So I specifically highlighted this as because we are training it, we are teaching it basically, right? We are teaching that network to perform this task, and the task is to recognize it as a dog. So by training the neurons to fire in a certain way when a given particular input such as dog, right? So fire in the sense to trigger. So as I mentioned already when I was explaining about this input and output signals. So when a particular input signal is processed, it either amplified or attenuated, so right. So and it will trigger a particular activation thing, right, a particular signal, a modified signal, and this is done by the human brain. So as we are approaching to build an artificial one, so we have to make the network or train the network to fire in a certain way when a given particular input. So and the way of firing should be common or should be similar when the input is same. So for a given input, the the sequence of firing or the way of firing should be same for the same set of inputs. So that is when we can achieve the task of recognizing it as a dog. Say a certain number of neurons, a certain amount of signals able to trigger certain number of neurons as a first or at the first. So suppose if you keep on feeding the data or training the neural network and feed the images of dog, it should actually trigger the same set of neurons, same set of signals again and again. So when it is able to do that, then we are able to achieve the task of identifying this as a dog. So in other words, the network learns to inhibit or attenuate or amplify the input signals in order to perform a certain task, such as recognizing a dog, or an advanced task such as speaking a word, identifying it as a tree, etc. So as the network keeps on increasing, or the structure, the number of neurons within the neural network keeps on increasing, it could be able to perform better and better tasks in order to do it more efficiently. So this is the overall summary about what a structure of a neural network looks like. So we are going to jump on more about building a artificial neural network that we actually inspired from the learnings which we have done over here. So we got that we need these kind of raw elements or these kind of raw materials in order to build a neural network, right? So we can do that. We have got an understanding, right? So we need a neuron, we need neurons in large number, we need large amount of data. So this is the overview about building a neural network. So in the next session we are going to do that, or build an artificial neural network, and we will refer to the artificial terms. So here the neuron we are representing, it as an artificial neuron, right? But when we jump into building an artificial neural network, we will name a different term for this artificial neuron, and we are going to study what it is and how it is exactly similar to the human brain's functional element, that is neuron.